Nabasa ko cellphone. Katong itawag sa ikon ganiya ba? Ma'am Dish. Dali ba, babe? Kinanglan ako ang WhatsApp. Pagkaon ha?
That are, oh, it was, okay. Oh, Carrie, I couldn't hear you. Can you guys hear me still?
Oh, I've muted myself. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot to hit record, so I'm going to let you keep going, but just know that the only place the recording appears are Facebook groups that you have to provide your rental property address that you own in order to view it. Okay.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, I've lived in the city my whole life, and I love the people here and our businesses and all the amenities that we have to offer here. And I really have felt that our city council has, watched in the last several years, they not being able to work well together. And, as I look under the hood, not necessarily always thinking critically and long term. And I felt like we were being steered in a direction that could be pretty detrimental to our city on many issues, when it, whether it's housing or public safety. And so I just really felt compelled to step in and do something. I've been involved in multiple ways in our communities. I've been on our school site councils. I'm on the Habitat for Humanity Leadership Council, and I have two kids, and I'm in our Minneapolis public schools, and I'm dedicated to being here. And so I wanted to make sure that, our voices were being heard. I've definitely felt that not all the voices have been brought to the table. And I feel like that's a big part of this job, is making sure that you're connecting and bringing all the voices to the table and letting people be heard. So I hope that answers the question a little bit there, Carrie.
It does. Now, what is your background, if I can ask? What is your day job, or what was your day job?
Yeah, no, I'm still working full time. When I graduated from the University of St. Thomas, and then I worked for Target Corporation. After that, I owned my own small business for 13 years. And then also, I just shuttered that business in 2020. And, but while I was doing that business, I started working full time at a organization called Antenna. We're a marketing consulting and staffing firm, and I'm a director of client development there. And so we support companies small to large here in the Twin Cities, and I connect them with marketing and communications experts. And so I do that full time, and now running for city council. I couldn't own my business and run for city council and be involved in all the things with my kids and work full time. So, some things had to move off the plate, and it was time. My manager and I had, a really great discussion, and we felt it was ready for both of us and our families. So
that's great. I got involved with this. I am a short-term rental property owner. And on December 4th, the Minneapolis City Council very quietly decided that each person could only own one short-term rental unit in the entire city of Minneapolis. I have a duplex, and both units are short-term rental. And that's how I got dragged in, and a number of us in here got dragged into this political event. We weren't notified, nothing.
Carrie, can you help me understand? I'm new and I'm learning so much. I'm a sponge, but can you tell me what short-term rental means? Like, what does that constitute as? Is that like 1 or 2 days, or is that a month, or 6 months, or what would declare that a short-term rental?
30 days or less. So it's basically, a number of us have Airbnb, a number of us have, traditional long-term rental. But a number of people here tonight are short-term rental property owners who I know that it costs me anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 to furnish a unit, plus each unit, plus rehab costs. And we're small business owners. All landlords are small business owners, but particularly so with the short-term rentals. We've invested a lot of money, and basically the city of Minneapolis has said to us we have to close our businesses. There's no bothering anything like that.
Okay, yeah, I do have somebody who doesn't live that far from me that he and I have connected, and he's described this to me, and so I've looked into it a little bit. So I am appreciative that we're talking more about it tonight, so I can understand the impacts. And I didn't know that was an ordinance or going into effect either. That was the first I'd heard of it. So like you kind of under the radar. So
have you learned enough about it to develop a position on it? I believe I was told, but don't quote me on it, that there's like less than 250 housing units that would go back into the supply of housing in Minneapolis as a result of shutting us down.
Yeah, what I've learned and what I'm most concerned about is the fact that your voices were not asked. You didn't, you were not brought to the table to help them understand more about your businesses and understand and be able to lean on your expertise. And that's really concerning to me, because you are the ones that, boots on the ground, doing this work, like you just said, paying the dollars, managing your own budgets. And I was a small business owner. I get it. I mean, we work hard, tirelessly, and we get really creative and get excited about ways that we can get creative about our businesses. And so not being able to be able to have a voice about that's really concerning to me. So, but so it's my understanding, and you tell me, Carrie, that you now can only have one. Is that correct?
One in the entire one, you can only own one or have ownership interest in one. So
Yeah.
if you have separate LLCs, because you have an ownership interest in those LLCs, they count that as more than one. And most mom and pop landlords create LLCs at the advice of our attorneys as a shield in the event a tenant, whether that be long-term or short-term, slip and fall on the ice and find themselves an aggressive attorney. If the property is titled in our name alone, now there are umbrella insurance policies, but if it's in our name alone, that tenant can sue us and take our personal residences if they win. So we're advised to put the property in an LLC, because then if they sue us and they win, they can only take what that entity owns.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that the renters groups don't quite understand. It's not some big evil empire. It's your neighbor whose attorney said, hey, protect yourself so that you have a house no matter what. Just put this in an LLC.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, I mean, I was in LLC. Yes, for sure.
You get it. You get it. So
yeah, I completely understand. Yeah, I think, for me, I do feel that when we put constraints and extremes and measures, I'll use another example of the city council, what they've done the past, and where it's been, I think, maybe harder on businesses is, we've eliminated any drive-throughs in the city of Minneapolis. And so, none whatsoever. So when we do these kind of blanketed extremes, like you're saying, you can only have one, without really looking at it by case, we limit ourselves. We limit our community. And so that's one thing that I take that into consideration for sure. So
would you consider grandfathering people who have not had noise complaints or any neighborhood complaints, who are an established Airbnb operating? Because I mean, we're going to have to get rid of our inventory. We're going to have to get rid of, and there's no compensation from the city of Minneapolis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep. I definitely would be open to having a longer conversation about that for sure. Absolutely. Okay. And it's my understanding the ordinance that when does it go through?
Well, it was supposed to be last spring, but they were so surprised that none of us knew anything about it that they extended till this spring.
Okay, that's what I thought was
March, I believe.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was spring. So, okay. So, knock on wood, if and when I'm elected, then we can for sure be having deeper conversations around this.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now I have to tell you that I didn't initially ask you. We've been doing this probably since the short-term rental group was doing it from December on, but it evolved into the larger platform maybe March of last year. We've been meeting weekly during the school year and monthly during the summer. And I had read there was a interview somewhere where they interviewed all the candidates about their position on rent control. Aren't you glad you said yes to this, Emily?
Oh, let me tell you, I'm learning a tremendous amount. And so, I love leaning on, those that are doing the work. I'm not I'm not a rental property owner myself. So it's good for me to hear this perspective, and rent control itself just does not feel like the answer forward for our city. And so I'd love to hear more about your perspective about it, but I've overwhelmingly heard that rent control is, that doesn't feel, and I can see the results or lack thereof, that it's not an economical way for us to feel that we're going to, I'm all for renters' rights, but this does not feel like that's the path forward.
Well, my concern is that many times we have tenants that we like, and we don't want them to move, because every time they move, we have to put thousands of dollars into painting a unit. cleaning it, maybe replacing things. And if we have a good tenant, we want to keep them. So one of the ways that we do that is we don't raise the rent. And particularly in St. Paul, which I know is not the city we're talking about here, the rent control ordinance that's on the ballot would freeze rent. So if the tenant moved out, you could, under rent control, you couldn't raise it to what the market says it should be.
Yeah.
And as a realtor who specializes in small multifamily properties, they are investment properties and their worth is determined largely by the amount of money they generate, just like any other business. And if you can't raise that revenue, if we're a small business owner, like if I raise prices, well, that offset the $15 an hour I now have to pay my employee, right? I got to make that up someplace. So that's my concern for my sellers. I want to circle back though. Initially, I think you were pro rent control and you've done a pivot on your position. And I'm curious as to what prompted that, and yeah, what prompted that? How did you, it's tremendously courageous and I applaud you for it.
Oh yeah, I guess I'd be curious to know where you read that I was pro rent control.
It was some interview in January where they interviewed all the candidates and the wards. I can dig and find it. It was early on, and it was a renters group that had done an interview with you.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I launched in January, so it could have been out of my naiveness. I'll be honest, it's my first time, running, and so it could have been me also getting just some of the terminology, mixed up and not quite understanding. And so since then, I have done an extensive amount of, and mostly what I like is meeting people. I can read all I want on the internet, but I want to hear about how this is affecting property owners and developers and property, small business owners here in Minneapolis. And so since then, I've done a lot, have had lots of meetings and conversations around that. And so that's where I feel that I've kind of gotten my data points and have felt that, again, I want a balanced approach. I am for renters' rights, but I also, as a small business owner, I understand supporting organizations and businesses as well. So we need to be making sure that we have all the voices at the table. And from what I've seen, rent control itself, like I had said, just does not feel like that's, that's not our ticket here. And if anything, I actually think that could be, and I've used this word before, pretty detrimental for our city. And that's not the path I want at all. So,
the long term, if you read the studies from Harvard and MIT and Stanford, the long-term studies of rent control and its impact on the areas that they studied was actually negative. It was good for the first generation of tenants, and then thereafter it was just a bad policy.
Well, it's very difficult, like as a business owner, you and the people that I've connected with, they care deeply about the city and the people and their renters, and they care about their properties. But if they can't actually, look at this year, look at the price of materials. They didn't have control over that. And, they needed to fix something to make sure that their units or their actual property was safe. They might have been paying 4 times for some of their building materials this year. And so, it's like simple economics. I think that we can't broad stroke that there's, every, person and every property owner is just, out there trying to make millions and millions of dollars. That's really not the case, as you guys probably all know. Like, otherwise maybe we'd all be doing this phone call from like the Bahamas or something. So,
most of us in the beginning are lucky to make $100 a month on our rental property.
Yeah. Some of the business owners I've talked to, what they've done in order to start their business it's really incredible. And some of them are now multi-generational businesses. And that's an amazing thing that you can do that for your family too. So.
No, I wanted to circle back because it's kind of a buzz term and I want to see what it means to you because I don't know that it's yet ever really been clearly defined in the media. When you say renters' rights, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I just think that it's, again, I keep saying this, but it is allowing, those that are renting, that we have their voices at the table. So I don't necessarily think that, I think that that probably shifts for every individual, but I think that making sure that we have, fair and safe places for people to live and to rent. I mean, to me, it's pretty simple, but it's making sure that, renters and property owners, we all have, a seat at that table.
Okay. Have you read the Cure report?
No, so I'll have to do that.
Okay, I can send it to your aide or your
Perfect.
campaign manager.
Yeah,
It's
that'd be
kind of
wonderful.
interesting just globally, and I'm going to share the hyperlink here later in the meeting of where people can download it and find it. But it's really kind of interesting, and I was really surprised that Nokomis, having lived there, I knew there were a lot of duplexes, but I didn't realize how high the percentage was and what a strong presence mom and pops have in that neighborhood. So that was kind of fun for me.
The neighborhood I'm in right now actually is the Wyndham neighborhood. And there's sometimes there's like a whole block of these really cute duplexes that are just so adorable. And it's one entrance. So actually when you first go up, I didn't realize they were duplex, and then the whole street is that way. And then there's several like intermixed, and it's really fun. Last night, my daughter came and with me door knocking. She's in third grade, and we were talking about, because this is new. We live in a single family home, and so she's like, oh, look at this, their entrance is to the side, and so yeah. So no,
28th and 34th. You were on 28th or 34th, right?
So what'd you say?
There's lots of bungalows on 28th or 34th.
Oh, over there too.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm actually then over on the other side of 35W in the Wyndham neighborhood, and
okay. I was
Yep.
thinking of what is it, Winona or whatever it is.
Yeah, Winona and Keewaydin, then even down Nicollet, there is a ton of really great, there's some really cute little like kind of bungalow style, there too. So it's fun. It's been fun door knocking. I'll be honest, you just see so much. So
that's great. I am going to open it to anybody who has questions for Emily. Please fire away, unmute yourself and ask her what you want to ask her. We're lucky enough to have her here. They have so much to say normally.
That was easy. Just kidding. No, I mean, I just hope, and I just want you guys all to know that, I'll leave my phone number. I can give that to you, Carrie, or I don't know if you have that already, but I at the door, I leave this for everybody, my phone number. I want people to feel that they can connect with me that way and have questions, and we can talk about it. And, to me, it's all about really learning from individuals and each other, and making sure that we, have a shared understanding so that we can move forward with a similar perspective. So I'm just, grateful if you guys, I'm happy to give my number too.
If we wanted to help you, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, Emily, my name is Gary Stinson, and I just wanted to ask you a question about your experience as a renter. Have you rented, maybe when you were younger, or maybe more recently? What experience do you have?
Yeah, I was a renter in college, and then after college, I became a homeowner in my late 20s. So, I rented, I went to the University of St. Thomas, so I rented over there. And then I lived over in St. Paul. So I guess when I say I've lived in Minneapolis my whole life, I took a little stint there my college years, but lived in a duplex there. And then I moved over to Minneapolis and rented over there, over here as well. And so I always had I had the best rental experiences. I lived above, I lived above the woman who, was a duplex top to bottom, and I lived on the top floor, and she was, a wonderful landlord. And, in college, one of the places I lived, their parents bought the home, and then we all rented from the parents. I think that's kind of typical sometimes. They came from a really strong Irish Catholic family, so there was over 10 kids in the family, so it was an amazing investment for them because they bought the home, and then they had all their kids went through St. Thomas, so they were able to then support their family and
Sure.
their with utilizing that property. And then when I lived in Minneapolis, I lived in a traditional brownstone apartment complex that wasn't huge, was more than 4 units, but it was just a really nice spot. I like old, so I had an old farm sink, and I like hardwood floors, and so I got all those amenities, and so so I've always had really positive experiences. So
Okay, so no, I appreciate that. My own experience, I rented a fair amount when I was younger and had numerous landlords, and I had mixed experience. And I would say as a landlord now, you learn from those things on how you should operate as a landlord and how you shouldn't operate as a landlord. So the bad experiences are educational, I would say.
yeah,
And so I think, that's one of the things maybe about, mom and pop landlords. They may have a similar kind of, background where they've had their own experiences and, try to do the right thing and, make it all work for everybody.
Yeah. And it's interesting because more and more people that I've met, I just met one of our neighbors, and they own property, other homes right in my neighborhood. It's like I never knew. And there's a lot of people who own property, and that's just part of their kind of their universe and what they do for work too, and I had no idea. She's like, oh yeah, Randy's over there helping out and working on those houses all the time. So I had no idea. So it's more common than I think we realize too.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
thanks, Gary.
Anybody else have some questions? I mean, Emily's doing well in her ward, so this is your chance to talk to a future city council person before she won't take our calls.
No, that is not.
I have a question.
Okay, Cindy.
Okay, hi, Emily. I'm Cindy, and my husband is sitting next to me, and he's not talking right now, but I am. But he is the local expert on this idea called TOPA, which is the Tenants Opportunity to Purchase Act. Have you heard about that?
Yes, I have. Yep. Yeah, I don't agree with TOPA. I'm assuming that you don't either, or maybe not.
No, actually, why don't you speak about that? No, okay, I'm just going to summarize. My husband is bored at home, and he's quite an intelligent person. So he spent a lot of time looking up all the studies that were done in Washington, D.C., just to make you aware. And I can give our email. Kari has our email. We're clients of hers. And it's a really disastrous policy in Washington, D.C. that's really been added up to, basically really hurt landlords. It hurts the timing of anybody selling their property and so on and so on. And it's literally a disaster. And yet we have these city council people here going, oh, well, that sounds like a good idea. And clearly they haven't even really done their own personal research. So if you ever need any input from Jim White, my husband who's not talking, he literally probably studied up on it for about a month this year.
Well,
so
that's awesome. I mean, I would really appreciate that. I mean, like I said, I don't support it in there's a couple main reasons, but one, I've heard the financial investment to get this set up is, exponential. And I just think that there are other programs that we could be investing in, things that have already been seen successful. The other thing, and I use my mom as an example, my mom's 82 years old, and if she were needing to go into, assisted living or something of that nature, and we, I have a sibling. So if we just wanted to rent her house for a while, just to not have to make all these big decisions at one time. Right. And we rented her house, and then we realized that, she got more ill or something happened, and we needed her, her assets of her home to pay for her health care. The fact that it would be tied up for, close to, I think was 208 months or something. That just, so there, I read a little bit, and it just does not seem, and to your point, have not seen it been successful. And so I'm definitely opposed to it, and will not be supporting that.
And not to mention that, especially considering in your neighborhood with 70.4% being mom and pop owners. Okay, the tenants, if you're going to list, we just listed a building, you have to let everyone know that you're listing, because you have to get the photographer in there. So they already have the opportunity, if they have the money and they have a down payment and they have a credit, they could already go to you and say, I'd like to purchase the building. They can already do that right now without any more regulation. It's just a nightmare of regulation, and it also spurs a cottage industry of people making money off of it. So anyway, Jim can inform you, but I'm so glad you get that issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm glad you brought it up for sure.
Anyone else have something for Emily, even if you're not in her ward?
Anybody in the ward, the 11th ward?
I'm surprised. You would think that I would. We had more people register than showed up tonight, but I know a lot of people do watch the Zoom call the next day in the private Facebook group. So
yeah, that's fine. But just, I just want to say, it's so important, if you live in Minneapolis or have friends or family that live in Minneapolis, to really encourage them to vote. They can vote early. And anybody who's in the 11th ward, honestly, anybody who's not, if they have additional questions around, the amendments, around just in general, issues in the city, I'm happy to connect. So
if we want to help you, because we don't have to be in your ward to help you, how can we best help you, Emily?
Door knocking. Any door knockers out there?
You'll give us a script, right? You'll tell us what to say.
We do a training. We do door knockings on Saturdays and Sundays. And we go through a training. It's like 15-20 minutes. We introduce ourselves, everybody that's there to door knock. And then everyone's off on their way. So we meet at a different park both those days at 11 o'clock. But honestly, it's, just making sure people know and hear and understand that they have, another option. I mean, we're working really hard. Like, as I said, I am outdoor knocking, and then I have an event at 7 tonight too, a meet and greet. And so we're just filling it up with as many people as I possibly can that can, that I can get my name out there. And of course, if I can meet them or connect with them, one-on-one, that's amazing too. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, we can let Emily go back to her doors and get back to the Cura report and everything else that's been in the media this week. I really appreciate it, Emily. I really do. I've heard great things about you, so keep up the good work.
Well, thanks, Carrie. And then the Cura report, are you talking about just in general, the polls that came out?
No, so the city council, I believe, hired the University of Minnesota to do a study to determine, like, what are the impacts of rent control?
Okay.
What are the models that are out there in the universe? And kind of the impression I've gotten from the city council members that I've visited with is they thought that this really supported rent control. And I've read it twice now. And the first time I went like, I didn't really necessarily read it critically. This makes rent control sound not that bad. And I went back and looked at it again and really read it this time with I'm not going to take this at face value kind of eye. And it makes no sense.
Okay. So, and how do you spell that? Cura? How do you?
C-U-R-A.
Okay, I'll look this up and then I can reach back to if I have questions about it
Yeah,
too.
but the thing that I found that I'm going to go over here, and I know you got to run, and if you want, I can put you in on the Zoom recording too. I can share that with
Yeah.
you.
That'd be great.
Oh, Marty from MHA is here. He's gotten back from Rochester. Basically, what happened between 2008 and 2013 is, understandably, vacancy rates went up and landlords couldn't raise rents. And you saw like 0.3% rent went up, 0.2%, 0.1%, and normal is kind of like in that 2 to 3% range every year. But like everything in the Great Recession, right? That didn't happen. So as we started recovering, landlords had to make up, their costs had kept going up. Landlords had to make up some of that ground they lost. And there was no housing built. 50% of all contractors went out of business during the Great Recession. So there weren't people to go build new houses, and there was nobody buying them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we had this gap. We were already behind in the amount of housing inventory, and then it got bigger. And then we were behind in the amount of rent we were charging, and that gap got bigger. So when the economy started recovering, landlords were able to make up some of that ground. And this has caused a lot of the tenants to go, oh, my rent has gone up so much. But when you average it out over the last 20 years, it hasn't gone up any more than it always has. It's just that you got such a discount between in the Great Recession from 8 to 13 or 14 or 15 that you came to expect that.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't normal.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of start eyeing that critically and looking at it, it's like, wait a minute, they have a bar graph on page 37 of the Cura report that shows this. And if you look at kind of the chart, which on page 37, 38, you see that rent spikes like in about 2017. And the landlords must not have been able to get what they were asking, right? Because it's a business, it's an economy. You can ask anything you want for rent. Doesn't mean people are going to pay it, right? Just like your house, you can sell your house for $1.5 million if it's only worth $3 million. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. So what do? You have to lower the price of the rent, right? So you see this spike in what rent landlords are asking in rent, and you can see that we epically failed, and all of a sudden we came back down. And it's right in line with what it would have been had it just been on that 2 to 3% trajectory. And one of the proposals they're talking about is we're going to do CPI plus 3%, or we're going to do some sort of cap on the amount you can raise rent. And if you have extraordinary expenses, then you can come to some mysterious board at the city of St. Paul or Minneapolis and appeal because you had to replace your whole entire HVAC system and your costs exceed your income, and you can appeal to these mysterious people who work for the city as to whether or not you can raise your rent beyond that 2 to 3% because of your expenses. Nobody says who these mysterious people are, right? That are going to decide this. It's if you look at the Cura report, and I can send it to you, from that kind of position, it's like, wait a minute, you're just basically, as a city council, you want to pass, this is my opinion, you want to pass a policy to make you look good that just leaves in place what's already there, plus create another department in the city of Minneapolis and city of St. Paul. In my opinion. Right?
Well,
you can have yours, but I've been arguing a lot, way too long, I think.
Well, I appreciate the perspective for sure. So
yeah, well, look at it critically and see if you see what I see, or if you don't, I'm happy to talk to you about it.
No, please send it. Well, and thank you so much, everybody. And just, if there's anything at all that you do, is you tell 5 people to get out and vote. So, and
I bet you'd take some donations too, although I understand you're doing well because you're smart.
Yeah, we'll always take money. We always will take money, but we're working hard. And but if we've got door knockers, hey, I like people. I like seeing people, and I like working hard together. So
well, and Nokomis has like great restaurants, lakes that are never too crowded, and trees, Minnehaha Parkway. It's a great
Yeah.
neighborhood. If you're going to go volunteer for somebody, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, it's a great spot.
All right.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for your time, Emily. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
All right, guys. I was kind of hard on her because she supported rent control initially. I will go back to sharing my screen. All right. Where's my, sorry, I still have a technological challenge, being that I'm old. Here we go. Okay, we were going through, for those of you who didn't, who missed the first part of the meeting, there was a headline in the Star Tribune the other day about how almost half of the Twin Cities support rent control. And if you dug a little deeper, I'm sorry, I'm looking for my agenda here. If you dig a little deeper into that ad or that story, there was a link to the poll results themselves. And if you go through them, they asked about all of the proposals that are going to be on the ballot in Minneapolis come fall. The police department defunding the police, or who do you trust to have make police department decisions? You can see that that's pretty much a dead heat between the mayor and the city council, even among African-American voters. Now, if you look at the undecideds in the African-American community, it's actually a really pretty high percentage who don't know what to think about it. Which some of the candidates we've had on here who were African-American didn't support defunding the police. So it's just interesting. Giving the mayor more authority over the city's daily activity. So right now, the mayor does not have he's not a strong mayor. It's not a strong mayor policy. He's not like the president or the governor where he can decide things. It has to go through the city council. And this is one of the proposals that's on the ballot as well. And you can see that most people support the mayor having deciding power, including African-American voters. Here we go, the one that matters to us, right? Rent control. Now remember, they said almost half. All surveys have a statistical margin of error, usually between 4 and 5%. They teach you that in journalism school, right? So any survey you read by anybody has a margin of error. So when we look at this through that lens, so there may be 4 to 5% less support for rent control. There might be 4 to 5% more. Same with the opposition, opposing rent control. Only 15% of Minneapolis voters are undecided on rent control. That doesn't give us a lot of room to move the needle, but it's really important that we as private landlords have conversations with our friends and our family on how rent control will impact us personally, right? Right now, a landlord is an abstract, evil business person. If they know that you as a human being are a landlord and they love and they care about you and they understand how it will impact you, they will vote in favor of you. I learned that from one of the campaigns I phone banked for. So share your story with your friends and your family and maybe even your tenants, okay? What's interesting though, is I know from just reading that young people talk about getting out to the polls, and maybe they will this time, but historically it's older people who go to the polls and vote. And you can see that it shifts as the demographics get above age 50. More people oppose rent control than support it. %52% of African-American voters support rent control, 33% oppose, and then just like the overall 15% are undecided. So we'll see if, oh, this one has a 3.5% points margin of error. You can see it right here where my cursor is. Okay. So to find that Star Tribune story with the hyperlink, I will copy this. And I think there's a way I can put this. Christy, can you copy this and put it in the chat? I'll put it. Oh, no, I can. I see how I can do it. So here we go. Star Tribune story and link to poll. I shouldn't have hit return. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, I have not had a chance to look at this one yet. Do you guys remember Claire? She used to be a regular attendee of our Zoom calls. She is still in the background and she's a voracious consumer of media. And she sent me this, which is an interview on rent control and housing with the Minneapolis mayoral candidates. So here's I will put this in the chat. Oh. And I will also post this in Housing Providers for a Better Minneapolis and St. Paul. All right, and then the big one. Oh. So the Cura report is the study that the Minneapolis City Council paid the University of Minnesota to do. And this is where you go to download the PDF. It's 63 pages long. So I encourage you to do that. That's the Cura report. That this is what all the city council members have read, and that has them thinking rent control is not such a bad idea. And I read, and like I said, I read it and thought, well, rent control is not such a bad idea. Maybe this won't be so painful. So I encourage you to look at their charts and graphs with a critical eye. I will open it here to show you some of the things that I thought the meat of it. So the beginning part of it is all about, here's different models of rent control around the United States. Here's some stuff about the Minneapolis rental market. They talked to 40 landlords. They didn't say how many tenants they talked to, but it sounded like a lot. His background story on Minneapolis or rent control nationally. I didn't realize that New York City has the oldest rent control policy in the nation, and it was created during the Great Depression and really hasn't been updated much. And very few cities or municipalities use the New York model for rent control anymore. So I want to go to page, I got a ways to go. It looks expensive, and I think it was. I think they paid him a lot of money for this. It also talks about a lack of housing being built. Here's an interesting graph. Property type of overall Minnesota house or Minneapolis housing stock as of 2020. You can see there are more duplexes and triplexes than there are single family attached as a townhouse, a condo, twin home, anything like that. So the duplex and triplex group comprise 11.1% of the entire housing stock in the city of Minneapolis. Or 11.1 of the units and 12% of the buildings themselves. Apartments are another 3.5%. So it's 15.5% of the entire housing stock in the city of Minneapolis. Buildings with a rental license, 7,404 of them are single-family homes. 8,701 are duplexes. The big apartment buildings that are 2,999 buildings, or 64,339 units total. 70% of rental housing in Minneapolis is in apartment buildings. Just under 20% in duplexes and triplexes. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier with Emily. When you look at where the housing stock is, and remember, Bender's ward is uptown. That's where Chris Parsons is, right? Who's visited with us before. Remember, he's having a fundraiser tomorrow. We are invited. They sent us an invitation from 5:30 to 7:30 at 917 West Lake Street. So Bender's not running again. Chris Parsons is running, and he is not in favor of rent control. Okay. They have 13,125 rental units. 2,900 or 22.6% of those in uptown are in duplexes, triplexes, or 4-unit or under buildings or single-family homes. So somewhere there's 2,967 people in uptown that we need to talk to about rent control. Property owners like us. Nokomis has 2,766 units, 1,948 or 70.4% are in small single-family duplex, triplex, fourplex buildings. So we've got almost 2,000 property owners in the Nokomis neighborhood to talk to. University, same thing. 2,600. Southwest. So think Linden Hills, Southwest High School, 3,056 property owners to talk to about rent control, to get involved here. So think about who you know who owns a duplex or a single family rental that you can talk to help the cause. Because it will cost us. If this passes, it will cost us. Yes, they're just opting to put rent control on the ballot. This is what they say in 2021. But given that the Minneapolis City Council is so unpopular with all the voters in the city of Minneapolis, do we trust Lisa Bender if rent control passes, do we trust her to defer this to the next city council? That's the question. I'm sounding more and more like a political wonk, aren't I? Marty, are you here? Marty's ignoring us. All right. Number of bedrooms per unit, rental housing stock by number of bedrooms. Average building age. One of the policies they talked about is either exempting, if rent control were implemented, exempting new construction for a certain amount of time, 20 years, they're not under rent control, or exempting, there's some cities where anything 4 units and under is exempt from rent control. But given that organically occurring affordable housing is typically older properties, and if we look at the percentage or the average age of a duplex in Minneapolis, it's 101.8 years. And single family detached rental home is 93 years. Odds are they're going to exempt, I would guess they would exempt the big boys, the new construction, and we would be subject to rent control. Property type. I gotta get to that graph where I can show you. It's on page 37. I'm gonna zoom ahead because you can read a lot of this, but look at it really critically and think about code violations, kind of a flat line. I wish there probably is a way where I can just click something and end up on that page, but it's beyond my tech abilities. Okay, here we go. Rent growth by community area. You can look and see that between 2000 and 2007, all communities were kind of at right around 2% in rent growth over that 7 years, and that included 9/11. Look at what happened during the Great Recession. So we had, according to the study, 5 years where each year we were losing 1.7, 1.5% in rent growth times 5 years, 4 years. I would argue that the Great Recession extended into 2013 as landlords. Certainly as realtors it did. Look at the average rent growth between 2013 to 2018. Landlords are making up that gap, right? You were negative 1.7% in 2008. You've got to make it up somewhere. When you come back to the total, the average, right? Look at Nokomis. Pre-crash 1.9%, total average 1.9%. It hasn't changed. Actually, near north, 2% was the pre-crash average rent increase, and the total over time is 1.7. Nokomis 1.9, Calhoun actually is down in rent. You see how you could look at this study and think that it was okay. When you read it, you're going to think, oh, it's okay. But when you look at the data and you think about what happened during those years of our history, it changed my perception.
Kari, it's Jennifer at Guardian.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. And also I just want to piggyback on what you're saying. Those 2013 to 18 numbers, they're not even, you mentioned making up, but they're not even out of line. They're extremely reasonable. And the market is the market. The consumer pays market. The consumer dictates the market. So I mean, it's not like it went from during the crash up 6, 7, 8%. Minnesota is a steady Eddie. It really is.
It's crazy. It's crazy when you read it with a critical eye as to how you can see rent growth, 2008 crash. This is fewer than 5 units. So this is our group, right? You can see 2009, we were getting like, well, I'm going to make it up. And the tenants said, nope, don't think so. We're back below the median there, right? 0 rent growth. Here we got arrogant again. 2011, tenants said, don't think so. We're back down here. 2014, we are a tenacious group. Let's try it again. And look where we are here at 2017, pre-pandemic. We're below, had we just stayed at the same rent, we're below it. And we're back up here above the line, but we're not up here. This is the study that they think justifies rent control. Now, I will give the study this. It does talk about how jobs. Basically, that we've got 2 problems. We've got a jobs problem and we have a lack of inventory. I loved one of their quotes in here from one of the tenants that they interviewed. She said, oh my God, I live in fear. If I don't pay my rent, they're going to evict me. Well, isn't that true even if we don't raise their rent? I mean, that's how it used to be played pre-pandemic. I'll show you that. That's on page 43. You can see again here on 38, you can see advertised rents by building type. The duplex group is the navy blue, but the heavy black line is overall Twin Cities rental market. What happened? Well, how do rent increases? They were 5% in about 2013, and they were down about 9%, it looks like, in 2020. Yes, that was partially inspired by the pandemic, but if you kind of back it up to where about right in here, you can see that we were already headed that direction. Let's see. There is an affordability problem in minority communities. I think we probably knew that. And that's probably where the city council is reacting most of all. The dark blue line is rent and red is income. You can see that among the indigenous peoples, their income is behind the rent increases. Same with the African American community. Latinx, according to this graph, incomes here and rent is stayed affordable, and yet they interview a number of members of that community in this report who say they live in fear of rent going up. This is where, let's see. It appears to be a problem primarily in the low income community. Right here, right where my cursor is, right here. I don't feel safe because if I can't pay the rent, they will evict me. I think that's true regardless. So I also noticed there's an increase in homelessness. This is on page 44. But it doesn't account for the opioid epidemic, mental health issues, or people who simply do not want to live in housing, or who perhaps we wouldn't welcome as tenants regardless, simply because maybe they have an addiction problem or they have some things in their criminal background report. So these are the various methodologies some of the models they studied, if they implement, or what it would do to rent. And I haven't really delved into that because I haven't really thought about kind of, I guess, rent compounding, for lack of a better term. But they talk about it adhering to the CPI. So I will put this in Housing Providers for Better Minneapolis. It's in the chat group, so click the link, download the PDF. It's definitely worth the time to go through. It is long, so do that. Does anybody have any questions or anything you want to know, or I can find out for you? You guys are not very talkative tonight. If not, then I'll remind you. Tomorrow there's go ahead.
This is Gary Jager.
Hi, Gary.
Is the St. Paul proposal using the same data to support that increase or that initiation of rent controls?
I don't know if they are or not. I had invited somebody from the city council and they referred me to I invited the city clerk from St. Paul and she referred me to the city attorney to come be a guest. But that's a good question. Let me find out the answer to, is St. Paul also using the Cura report? And I will get back to you all and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
They probably had St. Thomas do the same study.
It could
Right?
be. Yeah.
Jennifer, do you know? Are you still with us, Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know the answer. Oh, Marty just put in the chat, no.
Okay, so they're not using Cura. Are they using anything for their data? I mean, their ordinance is tenant drafted. Marty, do you know?
They made it up.
That was gonna be my comment, but I didn't know that to be fact.
Yeah, they just wrote it what they wanted.
It seems derivative though, Marty, of a lot of the policies I've read. It seems like they've read some of the same stuff, the tenants. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's written very tightly. They've eliminated any kind of exemption that's in place in any other part of the country that has rent control. So they knew what they were doing. When they wrote it, it's as tight as any we've seen. And I think that's what's starting to unravel with the public, is that they're understanding how drastic and draconian this is and how bad it's going to be.
So did the tenants really write it, or was it some other group that was pushing it that wrote it and had a tenant group present it?
Oh, Gary, I don't know for sure. We've heard rumors, and certainly we weren't involved in writing it, so I'd rather not say, but there were some legal resources that they were able to avail themselves of to write the ordinance.
Okay.
Will Cecil be able to talk about that next week, Marty?
About
St.
who
Paul,
wrote the St. Paul ordinance?
or what you know about St. Paul, or what to do about St. Paul. Gary's good enough to be with us as our St. Paulite.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The Stable Housing Ballot Committee is at work in both cities.
Okay. And how do we get yard signs, Marty?
Call the Stable Housing Ballot Committee. There's a
And
phone
that's-
number.
Can you put that phone number in the chat?
I'll try. Or I'll
So-
get it to you for sure.
So the Stable Housing Ballot Committee is the organization that is opposing rent control on our behalf. MHA is participating in that. We should make donations to MHA. Marty, are you a PAC? Is MHA a PAC?
It's a ballot committee, so it's
Okay.
different.
So what are the legal contribution limits we can make as individuals?
I don't know that there are any.
There are.
Okay, I don't know what they are.
I know if you were a PAC, we as individuals or our organization, so say you have a LLC for your property and you as an individual, you can't total up more than $5,000 in contributions to such an effort. I really strongly encourage all of us, myself included, to make donations to MHA, because we aren't going to win this with 18 of us in a Zoom call. We're going to win it by talking to our neighbors, by helping the candidates who support our positions, and by donating to MHA, who's doing the big lifting that we amateurs can't do. When you see stable housing, valid, what is it, Marty? It's not very catchy.
Principal housing.
For responsible housing. Know that that's us. All right, so know that that's landlords. And we need to step up and contribute, not just sit in our living rooms and not do anything about it, right? It's our financial futures. I'm getting really testy, but come on, right?
Yep.
This is all of our retirement accounts. I don't know what bigger issue we can be more passionate about. So donate what you can to MHA, donate what you can to the candidates we've talked about and talked to. This is not an endorsement. If there's another candidate in that ward who you know supports your positions on things, donate to them, help them out. But remember, Ward 3, we'd like to see Fletcher defeated. 4, we want Cunningham defeated. 5 is Ellison, right? So in Ward 3, we've got Michael Rainville who's visited with us. In 4, we've got Latricia Viclaw. I'm sure I'm slaughtering her name, but she was really fun. Ellison's ward, which is 5, that is Victor Martinez who talked to us. 9 is Alejandro Cano is not running again. And over there, we've got Mickey Moore. That's Powderhorn, huge rental neighborhood. Am I right, Marty?
Yep.
Ward 10 is Lisa Bender, who's been the protagonist of much of all of this drama, whether it be defund the police or rent control or whatever. And over there is Chris Parsons, right? He's talked to us. And then Emily tonight is running against Jeremy Schroeder in the Nokomis Ward 11. Okay. And of course, if you in your ward have somebody that's more favorable, it wouldn't hurt to donate to them and reiterate your position as a landlord. Goodman has indicated to a number of people privately that she is not a friend of rent control. But of course, she's got to take a position that, I mean, she's been at it long enough that she knows what she can win and what she can lose, what she can't. So, you know, let her know that you support her opposing rent control, that there are people who will vote and donate, vote for her and donate to her campaign. That Palmisano, same thing. Wherever you are, okay? So the St. Paul group, Gary, you would want to write a check to MHA or, you know, reach out to them and see if you can get lawn signs or talk to other landlords about the same. Your buildings are, you know, clustered with other landlords. And if you know any of those people, maybe reach out to them and have them get involved. We're working as fast as we can to get them in my database so we can have them come to this Zoom meeting. So.
All right, so the donation will actually go to Sensible Housing Ballot Committee, and I put the address in the chat. So that would be for both Minneapolis and St. Paul. And Cecil is talking to your group next week, so he'll give an update, but you know, it's a national organization and their campaign slogan is think twice, because you know, rent control sounds good, right? Sounds like something people would want, but it's a terrible move. And then for lawn signs, I think you have to get them, but pick them up, but I don't know. We can talk to Marty about that next week. And then it is not a pack, so there is not a cap. They've had very, very big contributors. It's a several $1 million campaign, and they already have 3 million.
Marty or Jennifer, do you know if there will be television or radio? Because I know there's not a lot of undecided voters on this issue.
I know for sure there will be billboards. I have not heard about television or radio. Marty, do you know? Otherwise, Cecil can answer that next week.
Yeah, I don't know about either one of those mediums.
I did get confirmation there will be billboard, though, one in each city.
Okay, so Sensible Housing Ballot Committee, 1600 West 82nd. Is there anything that we can do to volunteer there? Stick stamps on something or anything?
Nope, that's all being handled by the campaign folks.
Yeah.
All right, how about door knocking scripts? If we go out and talk to people about Emily or whoever, is there a secondary script we could do about rent control? Or phone banking?
That I can check on because they're doing phone banking and lit dropping as well, just on the vote no piece, not for candidates. But let me see what they're using if we can get our hands on it.
Okay, just think if we all go door knock, how skinny we'll be for the holidays.
Has anyone received a mailer? Has anyone gotten a mailer from that says like think twice?
Claire did. She sent
Okay.
it to me. Let me see if I can pop it up.
I live in Minneapolis and I did get one just last week.
Yeah, I think hers, and I don't know if you got, I forwarded a message to you, Marty. Claire wanted to know if Sensible Housing had created a website. Can everybody see the postcard
Yep.
Yep.
on my screen?
Let me find the website. There is one. Hang tight a second.
So this is the postcard that was sent out, I believe.
Yep, that's the first one.
Jennifer, I've got multiple people can share their screen. So if you pull it up, just share your screen. Hey, Christy, if you're still with us, you might want to extend the Zoom call by 5 minutes or 10 minutes if that's possible. If we all go dark, that's what happened. The Zoom call expired. So. Any luck, Jennifer? I think this is it. I think this is actually the website.
Is it think I can't see it. My eyes.
Yeah, this isn't the postcard. This is the website.
Okay, and then for St. Paul, it's Think Twice St. Paul.
So is Saint spelled out or ST?
ST.
Oh, I like that one. I have one question, Marty.
Yeah.
Should there be a person of color on here?
I don't know. I didn't make it.
Okay.
I'll tell you, we're getting phone calls about all these and you wouldn't believe what people complain about. You can just imagine if it's a white person, they complain that it's not an African-American person. If it's a not thin person, they complain that you're fat shaming. If it's a woman, they complain that it's not, it's unreal. It's very small number of people.
Uh-huh.
But the things that people call and leave voicemails on their free time is absolutely astounding to me personally.
Well, that's the problem. They have too much free time.
Well, yeah. But I love the ones who call and say, take me off your list, and they yell expletives and everything else, and then they don't tell us their name or address, so we can't take them off the list. That's the part I love. So they'll be getting more. They outsmart themselves.
I guess so.
So these messages and the people in them and everything else have all been run through focus groups.
Okay.
The colors are chosen, the themes are chosen. Everything is very scientific. It might not make sense to you or me, and it might look like a mailer for the Pioneer Press or a garbage company or weed control or whatever else we've heard. This is what the professionals are advising us to do, and this is what they've been successful using these tactics before. I don't pretend to or have the time to try to understand the psychology behind all of it. But I mean, I'm happy to hear criticism or whatever about them, but just know that there are several of these as part of a series of mailers that will be going out. And they all have their separate intentions, and they all lead towards getting the soft support and the undecideds and the no's very firmly to the polls, which would put us over the number we need to win both of these. That's our sole goal at this point.
Has MHA done any polling, or are you just looking at the Star Tribune results?
No, the campaign did polling, and they're going to continue doing tracking polling. So they'll do polling in different wards. They'll do polling based on where they got some outliers in different places around the city, is my understanding. I haven't seen the polling numbers that they did. These are all within the campaign that I'm not privy to.
Mm-hmm.
So they know where we're in trouble, and they know what messages might move folks. That's what they're trying to do. And then they will, after 2 weeks of mailers and phone calls and perhaps door knocking, they'll re-poll those areas and see what moved the needle, if anything. And if it's moving in our direction, they'll continue. If it's not, they will try something, they'll go to plan B.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a very complicated and sometimes very strange process they use, but they've done it successfully in other parts of the country.
For those who don't know, are you at liberty to share? And everybody remember, the more we broadcast what's behind this, this week and next week, the more likely our opposition is to get more money. So are you at liberty to share who was hired?
The overarching company is a company called Real Strategies in Washington, D.C. They are they were recommended by both of our national apartment associations as well as the National Association of Realtors. So they have a real estate background, and they've done a lot of rent control work around the country. And they're Democrats.
And just as an aside, I have somebody in my office who is on the committee with the Realtors Association who is interviewing Minneapolis City Council candidates. And she and I have not had a conversation until today about the candidates that they are liking. They have not endorsed anybody yet, but they seem to be falling in line with the folks that we've talked to here.
Wow.
Pretty straight down the line. So they love Latricia as much as we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anybody have anything? I'm going to say it again because I'm getting old and I don't remember. If you're like me, then you need to hear it more than once. Chris Parsons fundraiser tomorrow. Next week, Cecil Smith, CEO and president of MMHA, is going to be with us for the whole session. It's going to be at its regular time, 5 o'clock, 5 to about 6:30. He'll talk about Minneapolis and St. Paul. On Tuesday, October 5th, we have a special time. One of our guests is an attorney from, I can't say his last name. Marty, can you say it? Brian's last name?
Brian Nimchik.
Okay.
From Helmuth and Johnson.
He specializes in evictions, and he'll talk to us about the end of the eviction moratorium, which is slated, I believe, for October 12th. It ends.
Yep.
And it'll be at 7 o'clock because I will be at the Bigger Pockets convention in New Orleans, which for those of you who are familiar with Bigger Pockets, it's people like us. who own small multifamily property, and many of them try and grow into be much bigger. They have valuable podcasts about investing if you have any interest. But one of their main guys is actually from St. Cloud for that area. So I will do that from my hotel room at 7 o'clock. And that's probably the one I'll get the city attorney from St. Paul to join us on as well. To talk to us about St. Paul's ballot initiative. And I'm going to try and get the candidates back from the wards that need our help. It's probably our best bet. Does anybody have anything else you want me to pursue for us to learn about? The election is only a month away, just over. Gary, you look despondent. Oh, he's smiling now. Any questions? Zoom call tomorrow will be posted, housing providers for Better Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Facebook group. I will post the link to the Cura report and the polls in the Star Tribune article. And if anybody sees anything in the Pioneer Press, be sure and forward it so we can share it with everybody as well in that group. All right, if nobody's got anything else, I will see you next week when we get to bend Cecil's ear for 90 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.